Hello, Ciano here.
I am going to speak my mind, and you are going to listen.
Sorry, I just got a little excited. Did you know that Avatar: The Last Airbender has a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes? Don't get me wrong, I think it's an incredible show, and it deserves 100%. It's a really good show. But this score, I'm not okay with. And I just don't get it. I mean, this show is so underrated. I mean, look at this. And I know we don't like sequels. Sequels are boring, they're cash grabs, and they're unnecessary. But that's not the case with Legend of Korra. I think that our love of Avatar: The Last Airbender gets in the way of us appreciating how great Legend of Korra is. And I want to change that. So let's start with Avatar: The Last Airbender, specifically episode 3, which I think is the first glimpse we get at how great this show can be. Aang, Katara, and Sokka are flying to the Southern Air Temple, and Katara warns Aang to prepare himself for the worst because no one has seen an airbender for 100 years. Aang, however, is confident that the airbenders found a way to evade the Fire Nation's attack. Meanwhile, Zuko is docked in a Fire Nation port, trying to quickly repair his ship when he gets confronted by Commander Zhao. Zhao is suspicious of the damage to Zuko's ship, and after interrogating the crew, he learns that the Avatar is alive, they had him in custody, and he escaped. This sets us up to watch both Aang and Zuko reconcile with what has become of their home. It's the first of many times that their stories mirror each other. Throughout the episode, we see why neither character can return home, and we see the precarious place that they both sit. One, the last surviving member of an entire culture, and the other violently cast out of his home and his family by his own father. Later, both characters begin to lose their grip as they're forced to reckon with the traumas of their past. In Aang's flashback to his life at the Southern Air Temple, we meet Monk Gyatso. He was Aang's guardian, and though it's only hinted at here, what we eventually learned is that Monk Gyatso was the only person who was looking out for Aang the person, not Aang the Avatar. When the Fire Nation's army threatened war, the world called for a 12-year-old boy to sacrifice the only life he ever knew for the good of the world, and only Monk Gyatso saw the problem with that. Then, Aang discovers Monk Gyatso's corpse, surrounded by Fire Nation soldiers. Aang was confident that the air nomads were safe because no one can reach the air temples without flying bison, or so he thought. In this moment, Aang learns that it's likely his people have been wiped out by the Fire Nation, and that the only person who ever tried to protect Aang from the world died fighting a war that Aang was supposed to prevent. Back at the Fire Nation port, Zhao is preparing to leave when he says to Zuko that he is no threat to find the Avatar first because he is a worthless, banished prince. He tells Zuko that he has no home, no allies. Your own father doesn't even want you. I want to take a moment here to really consider the following interaction. Zuko claims that
You're wrong. Once I deliver the Avatar to my father, he will welcome me home with honor.
the way he phrases this shows how little he has been able to process what happened to him. Even though we don't know exactly what happened when Zuko was banished, we get a pretty good idea when Zhao points out that if his father cared about him, he would have been allowed to return to the Fire Nation even if he hadn't caught the Avatar. His scar is the very proof of how his father feels about him. Zuko challenges him to an Agni Kai, and he begins to struggle under Zhao's onslaught. Back at the mountain, Aang's grief awakens the Avatar spirit in him, and he begins airbending with so much force that he threatens to blow all of them off the mountain. And then they are both saved by someone who cares about them. Iroh gives Zuko guidance to win the fight, and when Zhao tries to strike Zuko when his back is turned, Iroh is there to stop it. Katara tells Aang that she understands his pain having lost her own mother in the war, but that her and Sokka are Aang's family now, and that they will protect him. We see both characters confront the horrors of their past, and both feeling burdened by a sense of blame for something that's beyond their control. Aang is not to blame for the Fire Nation's genocide, and Zuko is not to blame for his father's cruelty. But neither of them can move forward without a hand extended to them by someone who cares deeply about them. This is a kids show. When I see an episode like this, it's sometimes easy to forget. I think it's important for us to remember that a lot of Avatar: The Last Airbender is like this. One adventure per episode. The next 3 episodes are the same. The Aang gang lands, they interact with a new cast of characters, learn a lesson, and then they're forced to move on. This model is comforting. Who didn't have a TV show as a kid that had your attention once the theme song started playing? It didn't matter if you hadn't seen the episode before or if you had. It's entertainment that doesn't require any investment past the time spent watching it. You don't need to have seen the episode where we learned that the spatula that SpongeBob uses was actually meant to be wielded by his childhood friend until their untimely demise, at which point he promised to use it until he became the world's greatest fry cook. It's clean and neat. Setup, conflict, resolution, credits. That's the model for the next 3 episodes. They still make the most of these episodes. They introduce characters that will return later on in the series, but the actual plot in these episodes is a little dull. Watching these episodes felt sort of like when you finally finish some basic chore that you've been putting off for a long time. It feels good once it's done, and it isn't like doing it was particularly arduous, but is it what I normally want to be doing? The Kyoshi warriors are cool. Sokka questioning his internalized misogyny is a great story, but it's the B plot. The main plot line centers around Aang allowing his status as the Avatar to go to his head. It's always good to learn to stay humble, especially for a younger audience, and that's who the show is for. It's who it's aimed at. But once you reach a certain age, it's sort of slow and predictable. This isn't to say that all of these episodes are bad. You accept the Great Divide because sometimes you get moments like this.
Little soldier boy, come marching home. Brave soldier boy comes marching home.
Do you ever think about in Season 2, Episode 16, when Iroh yells at Zuko for risking his life for a destiny he doesn't even want? And do you ever think that maybe his anger comes from this fear that he might lose another son? All this to say, any sequel to this show was going to have a lot to live up to. The problem is that The Legend of Korra was intended for an older audience. Korra is 17, not 12. Well, technically Aang was 112, but mentally very much 12. My question is this: does Legend of Korra have weird pacing, or is it just that its pacing is very different from its predecessor because it's not a kids show? I'll attempt to answer that in the next video, but in the meantime, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you made it this far, consider subscribing. If you want to get an early look at what will be coming out on this channel, check out my Substack below. All of the videos on this channel are going to be inspired by the tangents that didn't make it into the articles. If there's anything from these shows that you would like me to take a closer look at, let me know. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.